All right, guys. Well, here we go, huh?
Okay.
Welcome to Small Towns Unscripted.
Welcome.
We've already been rolling, so we got all kinds of good
you
stories.
got all that.
We got all kinds of good stories. We got blackmail material. That's what we do around here. Suckers.
For sure.
No, so have you guys seen any of the podcasts? I think you have.
yeah.
Oh, we've watched all of them.
Oh,
we have.
Incredible.
Well,
That's cool.
I
We
appreciate
have a
that.
sit-down session and watch.
Oh my
You know
gosh,
the part I
love it.
love is not including us, but the people you have picked. I mean, just incredible. And being here for over 30 years, to see those people and the Watsons and all of them, it's an honor to meet those people and know them.
So it's funny, we were talking offline, but we say this just about every time. The whole reason we're doing this really is to help our community intertwine and get to know each other a little more than just of each other. Because so often we know each other from an industry or a segment in time or something that happened once or twice. And I was thinking about it the last podcast we did. It's a little unusual for smaller towns because they do intertwine with all segments and all demographics, where in a city you might just stay in your block, or you go to work, you come home, or it's just a little different, and there's a little more anonymity, even though the cities get bigger and bigger and bigger. I've heard a lot of my friends that come from like New York City or Los Angeles, where it's huge, they don't know anyone.
Yeah.
It's so the idea that you know of people, but you don't know them. So we kind of thought, well, maybe we should just be, well, we still can. We can have some stories, and it can be good for the families. It can be good for the kids and the grandkids to have a little bit of a historical, audio visual of the people that, like you said, Karl, there's so many people we wish we would have had the opportunity that we've all known that have passed away, and better late than never, I guess. So thanks for being
We're
here.
skipping over the introductions.
Yeah, the introduction. So this is Small Town Scripted. Unscripted. Small Towns Unscripted. This is Tara Chelan. Tara Chelan owns The Store, and she's got quite a thing going on. So call Tara Chelan here in Madison. That's where we're at. She's one of the sponsors of this podcast. I own Frontline Real Estate. My name's Russ McClellan, and
Also
sponsoring the podcast. This is Nicole Turner, and usually Desiree right there. Phelps is not here because little Frankie, her grandson, is sick. But all of us are all licensed with Frontline Real Estate as well. So,
Yep.
it kind of works for us too on a selfish side of the coin, because we want people to get to know us too. And that's kind of one of these days we're going to do an interview where we have somebody else talk about who we are, so people get a little bit of a better handle on all of us, because we're like a barrel of monkeys. We just kind of do all kinds of crazy stuff.
Exactly.
And this is...
Oh, sorry. I'm on my A game.
This is Debbie and Karl.
Debbie and Karl.
Okay.
How are you?
Good, how are you? Nice
Sometimes
and
I know
biased.
people so well, I forget. Oh yeah, the rest of the world doesn't know these people?
Right, we're here to get to know them as a
Well, this
universal we.
This is why I surround myself with girls that are smarter than me. I just do what I'm told, Karl.
I know, I do the same thing. After
Karl's a smart man too.
40 years,
Karl's a smart
with
man.
the same.
It took me a long time to learn it, but
I'm still learning. It's a work in progress every day.
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, let's start talking about you guys. You guys have an amazing story.
Well, we're all over the map.
I love that.
It's awesome, and let's start from the beginning. Like, when did you first meet each other?
In '85, it was in Wenatchee at the CA Tavern where I was working.
Okay, so let's
What
go
is
back
that?
a little further. So you went to Brewster High School,
Yep.
correct? So were you raised in Brewster?
I was born and raised in Brewster.
Right, and then you were raised
I
in...
was raised in East Wenatchee.
All right, and here's the
Went to
part
East
that I
Wenatchee.
think was interesting. You both left high school as sophomores,
Yep.
Yeah.
but you didn't know each other.
But we didn't know each other. Nope, we lived parallel lives, but separate. Different people.
Okay.
And
Why?
at the same time.
Why did that happen?
Separated.
Why did that happen?
And
Destiny.
No, I mean, why did you both leave high school?
I wasn't learning anything at Eastmont. That was mainly the thing. I would go to school, and there was too much confusion, and there was no one-on-one with a student, and I was in the back parking lot more than I was in school then. So it was like, why don't I just go to work? And so I went to work, and
There you go.
the
Karl?
rest is history.
I started working when I was 12 in a gas station, and high school, of all things, the high school mentor came to me and he said, "There's no need for you to be in school. You already been working for, at that time, 4 years in automotive. and I had a good job. And he said, you might as well, school's not for you. And so I dropped out, and we both went and got our GEDs, but to this day, the biggest regret in my life, but there's been positive to it, and that has been some of what we'll talk about, working with the youth and preventing other kids from making that mistake. And
Well, let me ask you something. Why was it?
Yeah.
I'm curious why. I know your story, and we're going to let everybody else know it too if they don't. In hindsight, why would that be one of your biggest regrets since it worked out?
because I kind of took away an opportunity. I never gave myself the opportunity to go to college.
Right.
But, you know, in this day and age, I highly don't recommend it to kids. We were lucky. We had really good work ethics, and we worked hard, and people noticed it. And nobody ever gave us a hand out. People would give us a hand up. And we always just seemed to run businesses for people. And then we came here and bought
Yeah.
Quik Auto, and I'd owned businesses before.
Yeah, so you both, you kind of then, you got out of school, you were working at a tavern.
Yep.
You were working at an auto shop or a...
I was working at Jerry's Auto
Jerry's
Supply
Auto
next
Supply.
door to where she was.
Yeah, what year did you guys, what year was that? Like,
That was 85.
85?
That was the summer of 85. It was like April. My birthday was like the 20th. I met him just before that. And it's like we started dating, and for some ungodly reason, I called my cousin and I said, I think he's the one, but don't tell him. Don't say anything. So I just played dumb for about 6 months.
Yeah,
And
there you go.
he, very persistent, must ask me to marry him after 6 months. And I said, maybe someday, maybe someday, maybe someday. I didn't want to do the repeat of the first one. So I was like, nope, holding out. And we then moved in together. We moved in that October. And we then moved to Bellevue. And
I went first, though.
You went first. He was like 3 weeks before me to get things established, get a job, kind of straight, get an apartment. Then it was like, okay, I'm here, 1st of October. We start our mission.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to take 2 weeks off before I look for a job. Well, I had the apartment set up in 3 days, vacuumed myself to death for 3 days after that, and said, I got to go find a job. This is driving me crazy. So I went out into Bellevue and said, I'm going to try and find out where he works. Got in his car, got on 156, because we lived at Crossroads.
Okay.
So I went down 156.
I'm a Bellevue
going
girl,
to
so I'm
the-
right with you.
To the freeway. Tara, I pulled out and started to get on the freeway and realized, no, I don't want to do this. I stopped. I backed up.
No, you didn't.
Yes,
On
I
the
did.
on-ramp?
On the on-ramp. There was nobody behind me, so Trans Am backs up. Over. There was a police officer there.
Uh-oh.
He does pull me over. And when he pulled me over, he goes, why did you do that? I said, because I'm stupid. I'm from Wenatchee. I never drove here before.
He let you off, I
He
hope.
laughed at me and then said, well, don't do that again. It wasn't the right thing. There's an on-ramp down there that you could have taken. I said, I didn't know that. So
Oh
he
my
goes,
gosh.
okay, you're going down this way and then take the right, or the left. And I went, okay. So I got there.
Oh,
and then I was like,
funny.
I don't know if I can make it home.
Oh, funny.
Because
Love
I
that.
never drove.
Small town girl
Yeah.
in the big city.
Exactly. Never drove in Bellevue
And so
or
you
Seattle.
Yeah.
ended up getting a job where
So
I was
then,
working.
He's working at a parts store. They need a parts driver. So I'm
Oh
like,
my goodness. Did you
I
just
can
tell them you
drive.
backed up on the on-ramp?
of course, I tell my story. Well, this old guy, what was his name? Gene Blackburn?
No, Jay Blackburn.
Jay Blackburn. Okay, Jay is getting ready to retire, and he says, well, I can take you to Seattle, and we'll show you the route. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I'm frightened. Because I've never drove in Seattle. And
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'll be lost. I'll be going.
This is like pre-smartphones, people.
Yeah.
Yes, we had no cell
Bag
phones.
phones.
We didn't even have the bag
Yeah,
phone
we didn't
yet.
have bag phone yet.
Beeper, maybe.
Yeah.
Payphone, a beeper, and a map from the gas station. That's
So
it.
I get in the van with him. We're in a big old Chevy van. We're going to all the parts stores in Capitol Hill. We're going to the Airport Way. We're going
Oh
to
my-
Fairwood. We're going to Kirkland. We're going to Bellevue drop off. And then we're going to Four Corners. I'm like, all this in one day? Yeah. All right, notepad. I'm writing landmarks down everywhere we're going, you know, like I got to
Yeah.
drive this myself next week. I'm scared to death. Soon as I took off out of Bellevue and headed into Seattle, I got to Capitol Hill, and I felt like I could do this. I got through Capitol Hill, and I'm like, okay, Airport Way, this one's where it's going to get hairy. I managed to make my way, and I had my cheat sheet, and
Yeah.
I made it. After that, I was incredibly insane because I drove like the rest of those Seattle people in a van delivering parts. It's like,
You
Down by the
out,
river.
people.
She converted early.
I love it. I love it.
did.
See,
Very much.
it can be
converted.
done.
It can be done because they put me in a little Datsun pickup, send me to Seattle. So I'm sitting on Rainier Avenue by Seattle Automotive. All right, waiting for the light. Bam! Some kid in a Trans Am just knocks the bumper off my truck, and I'm just sitting there delirious. And the officer goes, "Are you okay?" And I go, "What happened to my bumper?" I'm like, "Wouldn't you say get out of the car and sit down for a minute?" No, he wires my bumper up and sets me out. Off I go. He took the fence, he
Wired
cut
the
a piece of wire off of it, wired my bumper up.
No.
Nice guy.
Yeah.
This is like the good old days, huh?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I got to go across the floating bridge. So, in the middle of the floating bridge,
Oh,
off.
it falls off.
the wire breaks, I'm dragging that thing, I'm shooting sparks, and I'm like, hell no. We're going, baby.
Okay, I
drove
get you.
Until the pull off.
I get you because my mom, my entire life, said, if my car ever dies on this floating bridge, I'm jumping.
Yeah.
I am
Do
jumping
not
and
get out
swimming.
of your
I am
car.
not having all these people cuss me out
Yes.
that the whole bridge is backed
I
up.
figured they backed off. The sparks were flying. I just kept going, got over there,
I
got it.
so love
was
this.
able to get a bungee cord on it. Then you wouldn't believe the words I was saying all the way to the parts store. I was, you guys send me off in this piece of crap truck. So I pull up and I said, I need a new vehicle. I'm not driving that one no more.
At that time,
What
you guys were both
happened?
working at the same place.
Oh my gosh,
And
I
you were
love this.
all in love.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, at that time I was working in 4 different stores. I'd travel
Yes.
between 4 stores.
Yep.
And so we'd be
Were you, a
together in the
were you a
morning.
mechanic or were you just
Parts man.
Parts
man.
Yeah, I
Parts
owned
man
a
at
parts
that
store, and then I've got years of parts experience
I see. So
behind counters. So I was.
so you were selling parts to other stores?
Yeah, other shops.
He was
we
running
had
a wholesale kind of outfit to most of the gas stations and stuff around there.
the repair shops.
So you were an
yeah.
entrepreneur early.
Yeah. I went over and worked for Jerry Burschauer, who started the actual Jerry's Auto Supplies here. And
Wow.
when I first went over, he had 2 stores, and then we opened 2 more, and I would travel between the stores, and I managed the one in Factoria, and then I just traveled between the stores every day, and would help out in all the stores.
And so I know you're into fast cars and fast motorcycles and
Don't
racing.
say fast women. You were thinking it.
No.
I saw those words in your brain.
True love.
40
that's
years
what
ago.
I
That was
thinking.
true love.
40 years ago,
I
she
could
was
tell.
fast
We
one.
met racing.
As soon as the bumper was sparks, like that's it. They're in love. Game over.
Cars
No
have
other
kind
women
of been
can
our
catch him.
life. He had a 77 Trans Am and I had a 71 Camaro, so
There
we
you go.
raced going down
Oh,
Wenatchee
brother.
Avenue.
There you go.
Yeah,
So
I won.
were you always, because you did a lot of racing work or race car work in that time, right? Because you were going to the racetrack.
That was a little bit later, probably about '88 when we were living in Renton.
Yeah, we were
We
living
were
in the.
living there, and our neighbor was dating Les Lennington, who happened to be a race car driver at SIR. So he hooked up with him and started doing the dialing in on the computers and all that because we were running the 990 class. And
What does SIR stand for?
Seattle International
Seattle
Raceway.
International
We'd
Raceway.
race out there. We'd go out to Bremerton to the old airport, and they'd have a shootout out there, and you ran
That was
cars and bikes, whatever it was, and it was
Oh,
it
it
was
was
a
a lot of
blast.
fun.
We'd gone out to SIR, and the guy's car had some missing pieces on it, so I ended up my Mazda pickup. I took the license plates off, used the bolts from them, and we took a couple other things off the pickup. Well, we're coming back from SIR late Sunday night, zinging up I-5, and I'm passing everybody, and a state patrolman pulls me over and he goes, "You don't have a license plate on this truck." And I go, "Oh, they're here." And I start explaining to him, and he goes, "Why is this missing?" "Oh, I needed the bolts out of that." But just it was
Like,
a great
oh,
time.
we were racing. We had to do this.
We did that for a couple of years
yeah.
with the guy, and then the travel got to be too much.
Yeah, at some point, with all of that on the west side, you decided there's an opportunity back home.
Yeah,
Yep.
we're working in the parts store, and my boss and I had a difference of opinion one day, and I actually drove down to one of my accounts at an Exxon to get some gas. I was going to go to work for Boeing, and I had to go get my birth certificate because as adopted, I didn't have a birth certificate. And I pulled in the gas station, and the owner came out. We're pretty good friends, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to Boeing, blah, blah." And he goes, "Let's go have a cup of coffee." And we went over and sat down and had a cup of coffee, and he wanted me to come to work and run his repair shop. And I told him, I said, "I don't want to work on cars." And he said, "You won't have to. You'll run the shop." And so we sat there for about, maybe 15 minutes, and he wrote a number on a piece of paper and slid it over to me, and I didn't open it. And I go, "I'm not interested." And he goes, "Just look." And I looked down, my knees started buckling. I go, "When do I start?" And he said, "Tomorrow." And so before the end of the week, I'd fired both of his mechanics. I mean, I fired them both.
So were you self-taught the mechanic side as well as the parts?
Yeah, the mechanics side, I worked for a guy in Brewster that had an IQ, I mean, out of this
Bill
world.
Wendell,
And
yes.
just being around him, you learn things. And he just had that really soft, gentle side to him. And
Which
plus
is
he's a
hard to
Marine.
believe for a Marine.
But
he was the Marine way, that's for sure.
yeah, I mean, I learned a lot. And I was 15, and he actually went to work for Gebber's Farms. And he had his gas station repair shop. And at that time, there was 3 guys working there. I'm 15, and he comes in one morning. He goes, "I'm going to work for Gebber's Farm and run their shop. Carl's going to manage and run the business."
And what year was that again? When you were
75.
75, yeah.
Whoa.
And these 3 guys, they're all older than me by 10, 15 years. And one of them goes, "I'm not working for a kid." And I turned around and said, "Then load up." And he loaded up and left. And so I ran that shop for 2 or 3 years. I got married when I was 17.
Whoa.
Had a kid at 17.
Whoa.
He just turned 47 last week.
Yep.
Wow.
And so then I was working
What
at the
is,
gas.
I mean, talk about moving fast. Why are you racing?
It
We're
was
racing
like-
through life.
Yeah, it kind of seemed that
And
way.
you said you had a first
seriously.
marriage too, so you both
Yeah.
were out of school, and then you got married,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
got together.
Then
And
we got
almost the
together.
same timelines is what's really
seriously,
strange.
Weird.
It's so weird about the timelines, and then when we got together, it's just like everything clicked. You know, I mean, we're just
You just
best
knew.
friends, and
Okay, can we
Just
take a
knew.
little bit of a pause because my son is adopted, and you said that. I did not know that about you. That was a different time than now. Now everything's open. What's your brief, if you don't mind, adoption story?
When my biological dad died, my mom said, "If you ever want help finding your biological parents," or I mean, my adoptive dad died.
Yeah.
And I kind of blew it off, and she didn't know anything anyway. And we were living in the Renton Highlands, and one Saturday we were watching a TV show, a talk show from back east, and there was a lady on there that had located parents from adoptions, and of all things, she put her number up in the show, and it was a Seattle number. And so I wrote it down, and it's crazy.
It was
so the
crazy
next
fast.
morning, Sunday morning, I call her, and she was home. And I told her my story. I said, "I don't know much." And she said, "Where do you live?" And I told her she lived about 2 miles from us.
Get out.
I'm dead
No,
serious.
Seriously, it was
She lived
crazy.
just about 2 miles from us. She tells me her address, and I go, "We only live like 2 miles from you. We're at her house instantly."
Yeah.
Whoa.
And we went in, and I talked to her, and I said, "I don't know anything, blah, blah, blah."
Were you adopted as like a baby? Or?
Yeah, I was
Yes.
3 months old when I
3
was
months old.
adopted.
Okay.
And so she said, "Well, it's $350 for me to do this." And at that time, that was like $1 million to us. And
Felt like your month's rent.
oh my God,
Just about, but
Yeah.
I looked at Debbie. I said, "How are we going to do this?" And we came up with the money.
yeah.
And I was at work that following Thursday, and the phone rang, and my boss come out, and he said, "There's a phone call for you." And it was a lady, and she goes, "I have located your biological family."
It was so fast. We were
on.
just
And I go,
reeling.
"What?" And she
It
goes,
was
"Yes."
within
She
a-
goes, "I have email or fax," because that's how
Yeah,
had
yeah.
an
We still
email.
had fax
And she
Emily's
said,
then.
"I faxed your mom, and I'm waiting for her to sign the release." And so she said, "I'll call you later today." So I got home at 5, and she called and she said, I have the release form. Here's your mom's phone number. And she goes, you have a sister. And I've talked to her, a half sister. And so
It was wild.
I bet I dialed the number
a
1,000
lot.
times and kept hanging up and hanging up. And
Oh, yeah.
A couple hours go by and Debbie goes, Karl, just call.
Just call.
Yeah.
So I
Just
called, my
call.
sister answered the phone.
Oh,
And
gosh.
I go, is this Cindy? And she goes, is this my baby brother?
Oh.
And so I talked to my mom till, what,
Oh my
11 o'clock
gosh.
that
It was
night?
like, we were in
Where-
the middle of moving too. And so we're unpacking boxes and they're on the phone till midnight.
Where did they live?
So,
They lived in Playa
Playa
del
del
Rey,
Rey,
California,
Why does
on
that
the
make me
beach.
just want to cry?
And so
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I talked to my mom till almost midnight, and she goes, when are you going to come down here? And I go, well, I know where in the hell you live. And she goes, we live in Playa del Rey at the end of the LAX airport runway. And I go, well, I don't know. I'll see when I get tickets. I hung up, called, and we were flying
I
out
got
at
tickets
4
for him
a.m.
the
that
next day.
morning.
Oh.
And we were
we were
sitting in
going.
in SeaTac, and I looked at Debbie. I go, nobody knows where in the hell we're going or nothing. So I called my grandma in Brewster and woke her up, and I told her what was going on.
We're
It really,
headed to LA.
it upset her really bad. She got
did.
really mad, and she told me before she didn't care if I did this. Well, it really torqued her. So we went down and spent
4 days.
4 days. The weird
Total
thing
strangers, mind you.
Yes.
the weird thing is, we're sitting at SeaTac, and I go, oh my God, I don't know what these people look like. They don't know nothing.
Exactly.
And so I called the lady and got her out of bed, and I go, how in the hell am I going to know who these people are? And she goes, Karl, trust me, you're going to know.
Yeah.
And so we got to LAX, and we landed. I'm the last one off the plane.
Yeah, I had to
I'm
practically
sitting there,
drag him
and the
off the
stewardess
plane.
comes and goes, sir, you have
It's
to get
time
off
to
the
get
plane.
off.
And I'm like, I
He's
can't.
Just
I can't.
anxiety.
It was
Oh my
anxiety
God.
of-
So we get up and we walk into the terminal, and there's like 5,000 people
Yeah.
in there, and I'm standing there going, how in
jaw
the
dropped.
hell? And I'm looking at Debbie, I go, this is the dumbest thing we ever did. And all of a sudden, Debbie looks over at these
Just
people, and
kinda
her jaw
Jaw
drops and
drops
goes,
to the ground.
that is your family right there. And I walked over to
Oh
her.
my
dad.
gosh. Chills,
Ah.
chills,
And my-
chills, chills.
I'm
So
not
my
crying.
biological mom and dad are married.
Are together.
Still together. And Debbie goes, that is your dad.
Wow.
I mean,
And I walked over,
oh
and
my
he
Whoa.
just,
gosh.
I mean, it's just like that. I just walked over, and they
And
go,
she
oh my
You know
grabbed
God.
what? Love is love, people.
And then-
Oh,
love is love.
Crazy.
He turned around and walked away with his dad side by side, and I'm just still looking at going, the backs of the calves, the way they
So,
walk.
Like, what was their story? They were
everything.
young, or
That
they
was
were
a weird one, too.
broke, or they were what?
They had been together, and they split up. And then they got back together, and my mom told the story that she'd been raped, but we don't believe that was true because, you know, back then, and they were devout Catholics. My mom's actually a full-blooded Chippewa Indian. She's a little short, squat. I mean,
No way.
yeah,
Yes.
just
Right.
amazing. She was born and raised on the Chippewa Indian Reservation. It's just crazy. And my dad's Welsh.
It's
And
interesting.
Whoa.
So that's where I'm like, okay, now we kind of know where the looks are
So-
coming
Yeah,
from.
yeah, yeah.
You know, the-
I went down there, oh my God, I don't know, probably 4 or 5
4 or
times
5
just
times,
by
yeah.
myself. I'd fly down and
And how'd your mom
oh, my
feel
mom
about
was,
it?
she was okay, but there became problems and
Life.
it just
life.
life, you know. And the
Honestly.
I got to meet my one of my grandpas,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really cool because my adoptive grandpas were both dead, but I'll never forget sitting down across from my grandpa, and he didn't believe any of it. He thought I was there because my mom actually had millions of dollars worth of oil underneath property she owned in Montana.
You guys,
and they
come
figured
on.
they figured that I was after
gold
money
diggers,
or something,
yeah.
and I'll never forget I was sitting across from my grandpa, and he goes, I don't believe any of this, but he said, lean over here, and that man grabbed me and pulled me right up this far from him, and he looked in my eyes and he leaned back and he goes, you're my grandson. And I go, how do you
Blue
know that?
eyes.
And he says, your blue eyes, they come from my side of the family. And he said, your deep blue eyes, only my side has it. And he goes, you're my grandson. And that was
Jeez.
that was
That
a
was
cool
like-
experience.
Quite a story.
But yeah, I mean, my sister, my mom died on my birthday.
Your birth mom.
My birth
Birth
mom
mom.
died on my birthday like 8 years ago. And then I'd lost touch with my sister. She ran a big business in California, and they moved to West Seattle, and she bought a door store business over there, and she bought a townhouse, not a townhouse, but I can't think, but 2 houses hooked together.
Like a duplex?
Duplex. And she rented one. Anyway, I talked to her about, it's probably been 3-4 years ago. I talked to her and she said, I've got cancer. Well, then last June, I thought, I need to call my sister. And I called her business and the lady answered the phone. I said, is Cindy there? And she goes, there's no Cindy here. And I go, Cindy, Kimsey, she's my sister. And she goes, just a moment. And she put me on hold, and this guy gets on and he says, your sister passed away. And I didn't know it. And here's what's crazy. My sister dies at home on a Wednesday. On Friday, her husband's dad lived with them. He passed away. On Sunday, the husband passed away. 3 of them passed away
All 3 of them.
in 5 days in the house.
Like they were all waiting on her.
It was just, it was crazy. So then I've got a brother who lives in Bainbridge. Very super successful building, does houses and stuff. Now he's doing buying homes and knocking them down and rebuilding them, flipping homes. But we had exchanged some videos early on, and he never wanted anything to do with me. And so one day I thought, I want to call and find out what happened. So I started chasing him down, and I couldn't find him. And I found a number for up around Everett or something. Anyway, I called it and left a message, and he called me back. And he said, my fiance has been bugging me to call you. And he said, and we had a really nice conversation. And he said, I'm right in the middle of moving my business right now, and I'm moving to another house. I'll call you. And he said, I've got a friend that just built a house in Manson on the water. And he said, I'm over there all the time. He said, he knew where I lived. He said, so you live in Manson? And he said, next time I'm over, I'll come find you and we'll go have dinner. And then everything stopped. So then I went in to do Ancestry, and I called him and I said, hey, I need some information. And I've never heard back from him.
And you know what? Things are hard.
Oh, they are. And I finally, after about, I don't know, probably a couple months ago, I just thought, you know what? It is what it is.
Right.
I'll let it be. So.
And then, so your adoptive family, is your mom still around?
No,
Did you
all my family's gone. I've got one brother, and he's adopted too from another family. Yeah. And matter of fact, one day he didn't want to know anything about his family. And when my grandma died, one day my brother, I was talking to him on a Sunday, and goes, "Man, I wish I could chase my family down." Tara, 15 minutes. I'd located his mother.
her.
She had died, but I was on the phone to his aunt in Spokane. And I call this lady and I go, are you sisters to so-and-so? And she goes, yes. And I go, did your sister give a child up for adoption in 1956? There's this like long pause on the phone.
Wow.
And this lady goes, we are downstairs at our house. Give me a second to walk upstairs. And she picks the phone back up and goes, we've been waiting for this phone call for 50 years.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
And she goes, is it you? And I said, no, it's my brother. And so I talked to that lady for a long time. And the funny thing is, we've got common friends.
No, come on.
Yeah, she goes, I said, I'm from Brewster. And she goes, oh, did you know the Skirkas? And I go, I just came to the VA hospital with the cheerleaders a year before. And her dad had been in the VA hospital, and he was a graduate of Brewster. And so I'd met the family at that time. And, what a small world. And so I called my brother right back, and I go, hey, your mom died, blah, blah. Here's your aunt's number. You've got brothers, blah, blah. And my brother, it hooked him up.
So it's so different now because it's all open.
It is.
And so Brody knows he's adopted. He's seen pictures of his birth mom. He knows that he's got siblings. He asks when he can meet them. It's tricky to navigate. I would say,
there's
even
no
under
book on it.
Under the best situation. But I do feel like it's pretty healthy that it's all out there, because
I-
those are challenges. That, I mean,
Those are
you luckily, I
challenges.
mean, it sounds like you were lucky on both for you and your brother.
And we knew all along, I knew from as far back as I can remember that I was adopted. I mean, my adopted parents made sure that we knew. And I never thought anything of it until I got a little older. And then I just, and the weird thing is you search crowds. I mean, like I go to a Mariners game or to a big sporting event, and I'm just like, you're constantly looking, going,
And I
God,
think
is there
that's from
somebody?
not knowing? Because
Yes.
once he knew, then that stopped.
You can
all
kinda
that
calm down.
searching.
Yeah, you're not
Yeah.
searching anymore, and it kind of fills that void and lets you know where you're from and who
Calmed
you
him
are.
down quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, at 8, Brody's very curious, so we'll have to make the trek to Coeur d'Alene so he can kind of put all those pieces.
I wish Des was here. She had
Together.
she has some adopted brothers and sisters, and one of them, her brother, Jim and Marge's son, is a Chippewa Indian too.
Wow.
Like one of the outs, right? I believe that's what he is, but part Chippewa. That's quite a story.
Wow, I love that. I did not know that.
So, well,
That's
it sounds like you
interesting.
are. You do like this podcast. It's like you're built for this podcast. You can be a detective.
She needs to be a repeat.
Exactly. You got the passion to track things down and learn about people, and that's something it's a great example. I never knew that.
I know, me either. And I've hung out with these two, quite a bit.
Well, that's what this is all about, right? So
Yeah.
we just get to know each other and help bridge whatever. I think getting to know people just gets rid of some misconceptions sometimes when you actually get a chance to listen to them and spend some time talking to each other authentically, like you just did, both of you, and your stories, and and it's cool. It's just cool. So to go from there to back here.
Yeah, how'd you get here again?
We one day Ron
My fault.
Burschauer owns the Jerry's Allspice, and Natwell did until they just sold them. But he called me one day and he said, "Hey, this shop's coming up for sale." And at that time, Pat and Al Boyd owned Quik Auto, and Pat, as you
Pat
know,
was
had
sick
cancer
at
and
the
was really
time.
sick.
And
he said, why don't you run over tomorrow and let's take a look at it? And I go, I can't just leave work. So I called my boss and he goes, "Karl, I require 2 weeks and I've got you booked out for 3 weeks right now." And I told him what I was doing. He said, "You know what? If you can better yourself, then take the day and go." And so we came over and we sit down with Al Boyd and Leo Miller, and I don't think an hour went by, and we're shaking hands going, okay.
In that hour, Al's like shaking our hands. So, and when are you going to take over? When are you starting? And I said, "But Al, we have a 4-bedroom house we have to move out of over in the other side." So
And
I
a
said,
and jobs,
"We got
yeah.
things to tie up before I can come here." I said, "How about a month?" He gave us a month. We started May 2nd of '94.
And Debbie actually came over on her own for the first 2 weeks, because when I went back and told my boss that what was going on, he was so happy for me. I mean, it was a huge shop. And he said, "I need 2 weeks out of you, Karl. You got to give it to me." And he'd been so good to me. And I told Debbie, I said, "You're going to have to go over and run the shop." And so Debbie came over and I stayed for 2 weeks and worked for him and finished up.
That's awesome. We'll appreciate
that's
this. Did you know Bill Sargent before?
Oh yeah.
Bill's son, Willie, big gentle giant. He works at a parts store, and he has a little Asperger's a little bit, but he can memorize all the parts. And so
And the part numbers.
all the part numbers. He doesn't have to look anything up.
I can remember
It's
numbers,
that.
and it's a gift, and that's. I always laugh. I know you've listened to me do basketball, but when I sit and write the rosters, I can memorize the name and the numbers,
Yeah.
and it's something I've always prided myself on is I call every kid by their last name. I know the name and the number before tip off.
cool.
And 2 years ago when I was at State, I'd done about 12 games. I was doing like 4 a day. And one of the WIAA guy looked at me and goes, "I don't know how you do that." He said, "You've memorized like 200 kids today."
Yeah,
And he
today.
goes, "I don't know how you do that." And I said, "It's just," and I
I'm
think
special.
it's from working
Exactly.
with parts all my life.
Parts,
I
I mean,
I still
yeah.
remember part numbers from 30 years ago. And
I do too.
driving down the road, I'll look at a license plate and go, "Oh, that's so-and-so," and Debbie will laugh.
And before we get into the moving back here, I'm curious about the parts store. So that was when you had the big books
Yeah.
before computers.
Oh, big books. Yep. I was working at TRW at the automotive. Oh gosh, it was a big warehouse in Capitol Hill. So
They're a parts
they were
manufacturer.
Whole manufacturing. We were selling pistons and we were selling everything to make an engine. So then I was learning connecting rods, push rods, all this stuff, and I'm shipping them to New York. And I had taken a lady's job. The lady in the office had retired, and I was running parts. And so I was in and out of there all the time. Well, Richard, the guy who managed it, he calls me at the counter at Karl's job and says, "Hey, Debbie, would you like to come to work at TRW?" And I go, "Yeah." That won't take too long to decide. It was a whole benefit package, retirement, the whole 9 yards. The only bad thing was driving to Seattle and spending 2 hours on the floating bridge going in and coming out. But that's where I learned a lot of part numbers and having to touch those part numbers over and over and over and over again, and then inventorying them 3 times and having to touch them multiple times. They stuck in my head. I knew more about cars and how that connecting rod went to that piston and how that went into that cylinder and how that all went up and down with that crankshaft.
And I bet a lot of it's too is problem solving for the customers, or like what's happening to my truck? What do you think it is?
He's a great teacher.
People would come in the office, at Quik Auto, and they'd go, "Yeah, I got this code." And Debbie'd go, "What's the code?" And they'd tell her the code, and she'd go, "Oh," and she knew what it was. And goes, "Well, that's probably not what's set in the code, but it's just amazing the knowledge she has."
It's funny.
Yeah,
we were
so
just
cool.
in Seattle with my truck. I have a Dodge, 2018 Dodge half ton. And the computer's all messed up.
Oh,
So
it's beep, 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 beep.
every time it's flashing something different. It's talking to my phone. The manual transmission or the automatic transmission goes out while I'm driving.
Yeah. the power steering wheel, yeah, that's great.
It's never the same.
Oh, wow.
So I took it into the shop. I won't say which one, but I took it into the shop and I go, "Hey, computer's not working. Like obviously something's wrong because it's literally." It's like a jukebox. And there's nothing consistent, and it's flashing, and it's beeping, and it's doing all those things like it's possessed.
Yeah, like it turns up the air
so-
conditioning, then the heat's on, and then
It does everything.
Totally got its own mind.
So it's this possessed truck of mine. So I go, I tell him, and then I call him back. I go, "What's going on?" He goes, "Well, your computer said everything needs to be replaced in your truck."
and it was serious.
I said-
apparently.
It's just Rolodexing
I
through
was
every
like,
problem.
Are you serious? I go, "I told you the computer's, that's probably the issue since not everything can be wrong with the truck simultaneously, I'm thinking." And then I said, "Where is it?" And he said, "It's in the shop." And I went to the mechanic. I go, "Just give me the keys." And I took it out of the shop. So I still haven't fixed it. The only thing I'm worried about is when the automatic transmission goes out, doing about 60, it can be a little dangerous.
At least it doesn't go in reverse
Yeah,
at 60.
Yeah, right. That's next. It's
Okay,
possessed.
so you said earlier that you were offered the job, but you didn't want to work on cars.
Yeah, I
You
did.
didn't want to, but you owned a place where all you did was work on cars for how many years? 20?
28 years.
28, we had Quik
28
Auto.
years. So
Quik Auto.
did something change in there, Karl?
Yeah, I become an owner.
Well, you saw the math. You saw the number he was going to pay you, and you're like, "Yeah, I can do that."
And I'd actually started out working in a parts store when I was young, and I didn't get paid. I would put freight away, and that's where I learned numbers. The cool thing was when I was early on in school, I knew all my fractions from cleaning my boss's end wrenches every night and putting them back in order, and that's how I learned my fractions. But I'd been in the parts business and had worked in automotive and working on cars, and I didn't want to get dirty. And I told him, I don't want to get dirty. And then the 2 guys he had working for him, one of them come in every morning, he'd drink a half gallon of vodka every night, and he'd come in the morning. And the second day I was there, he had this great big ghetto blaster in this 2-bay shop in the middle of the shop. And And it was in Factoria, so you know.
Do we
it was,
need to describe to people what a ghetto
I
blaster
get
is?
it. I was just gonna
It
say.
plays music, but not over the air.
I mean, I've actually
It's
never
not
heard that
Bluetooth.
term, but
Boombox.
I understood that was what that was. So I think there's hope for humanity.
Good
Okay.
job, Nicole. Good job.
He'd come in every morning. He would be. He could blow a 5.2 in the morning, and he'd come in. He'd set this boom box up on this hook on this post in the center of the shop and turn it all the way up.
And
we had customers in the front office all the time coming in. You know, it was a classy place. And I walked over the second day and I turned it down, and he walked back over and he cranked it back up. And I turned around and I go, "We're not doing this." I said, "We're not blasting music in here. We're changing this shop to professionalism." And I cranked it down, and he walked right back over and cranked it up. I walked over and I picked it up and went, poof! I threw it on the ground. That thing shattered in a million pieces.
Boom box.
And he was a big guy. He was a
There you
big
go.
guy, and he turned around and he looked at me, and I said, "End of conversation. We're not discussing this again." And it was about 2 days later, he decided it was time
I
for
was
him to
just going to
leave.
say, I thought he was going to leave right then.
So
Yeah,
then
I
I'm
he
working
didn't.
on cars.
Yeah. So then it was working on cars.
And then you worked at Napa when you got here first. You got into Napa. Was that what?
No, I worked at Napa when I was a young kid. in
So what did you
Brewster.
buy from Al Boyd? What was it?
Quik Auto.
Quik Auto. You
Quik
bought
Auto.
Quik Auto from Al Boyd.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought Quik
And that
Auto
was in
from Al Boyd.
2000?
That was in 94.
94.
That we did that. We were in the old building for 6 years.
In the
and
car
then
wash
in
building.
2000, we built the new one behind Les Schwab's.
Gotcha, yeah.
And we spent 28 years there.
28
Yeah.
years, yeah. So overnight success.
Cool.
Blood, sweat, and tears, baby.
What was the best thing about being entrepreneurs and working together? Or maybe
We
those two
really
different
loved
questions.
the customers and the customer service because customer service is our thing. I mean, when the customers would walk in the door with a problem, I listened so that I could help that problem because I know your car is a means to get to work.
Yeah.
It's to get here,
Kids
there,
to-
take the
yeah.
kids
Yeah.
here, there. It's needed. So I would listen and try and help and get that. Okay, Carl, you got to do this, and you got to do this. And there was customers, we would jump in, do things, life-saving things. They got to go here, they got to do this, and still get our job done. I don't know, we just love doing what we do.
When we were on the west side, the gas station I went to run,
Yeah.
Exxon Mobil merged and it became a convenience store. And so the owners bought another gas station on Northeast State and 156 at Crossroads. And so I went up to run that as a mechanic shop, and Debbie ran the new C store. Well, that year, Exxon had a nationwide program called Commitment to Excellence, and there was over 75,000 Exxons involved in it. She won it.
Oh.
Got a trip to Hawaii, $2,500. But
It
she
was
won
awesome.
a nationwide contest for
incredible.
commitment to excellence for customer
Well,
service.
I will vouch for the fact that
awesome.
you are definitely missed in this town in that regard because
And we miss our customers.
it's
in the
nice to
worst
know.
way.
It was nice to know there was a place to go. Like,
Yeah.
You know,
I
as,
need
And
help.
that was, yeah.
I was thinking today about all the times with the customers and stuff, and you always do things quietly for people, and you're not looking for anything. And one day, this lady came in. It was about 11:30, and we're kind of starting to think lunch. And she came in. Her brand new Volkswagen was on a tow truck, and her emergency brake was stuck on. It had electronic emergency brakes. And this woman comes in the shop, and I mean, she
in a
is in
panic.
distraught. She is bawling her eyes out. And she goes, another shop wouldn't even look at the car, wouldn't even let me unload it. And she goes, I'm going to lose my job. And she was a CEO, and she had to be back to Seattle. And I mean, this woman was beside herself. And she goes, will you just look at it? And I went out and I looked at it, and the knob wouldn't turn. And I looked down, and of all things, a dime had fallen down out of the console into it. And I took my pocket screwdriver and popped that thing up out of there and went click, click, the e-brakes release. And I went back inside, and this woman is in there bawling her eyes out. And I said, as soon as he gets you off the truck, you can go to Seattle. And she goes, you fixed it? And I told her what happened. And she gets her checkbook out, and she goes, God, what do I owe you? And I go, there's a drive-in downtown called Lakeview. I said, go down and tell him Carl wants a milkshake. And she came back with a large chocolate shake. And
He
she
worked for
goes,
chocolate
you got to
milkshakes
take more than this from me. I go, no, a hug and a chocolate shake. And that woman went back to Seattle.
Yep.
And about a month later, she called and she said, hey, I'm coming over for a week. I want you to do, and she had a list a mile long of work we did on her car.
that's
and
awesome.
she, you know, just,
Kelly was a good customer.
she goes,
from that
I've
point
never
on.
seen
She came
people
over for
do
all
that
her
before.
services and timing belts. It's like, I'm over for a week. Can you do my timing belt on my Tiguan? Yep. Okay.
This is how this podcast started.
Yeah.
Right here.
Yeah. And it's
Talking about relationships and how that's what it's all about.
It's like Jim and Marge Sackett or Earl Stanford talking about people that were farmers and got sick and they helped each other with tractors or whether, you know, we were just talking to Kevin.
Earl was one of my customers.
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
that
yeah.
man.
Kevin and Andy Preck, you know, they've done services for people that were a little bit short of cash.
Yep.
And he said today, I thought it was profound. I mean, second generation, never turned anybody away. Whether they had the means or not, they helped their family through
I
tough
had a
times.
couple of little old ladies that I took care of. They were my
Little pet projects.
They drove. They couldn't afford to drive, but I kept their cars going.
you know, sometimes you're,
They needed things. I took care of their oil changes. Some of their repairs. I'd stretch them out there for them and make it, you know, so it wasn't such a hard hit for them.
Well, that's an abundant mindset. You know, I've done,
Yeah.
you know, in real estate, it's the same thing for people, and it comes back tenfold.
It does.
If you love on people,
It does.
that referral network,
and
they'll be-
sometimes you find yourself at some little old lady's place, you know, shoveling snow with your mechanic, and he's going, why are we here? And it's just shovel. You know,
I'm turning 65 and wellness care keeps calling me.
AAA.
I'm telling you, they want me to take the advantage.
I love it. I love it. So you had a. Let me ask you this: in business, what were the tough times in business? Was there any tough times?
oh man, the first 4
The
years
first
we were here, winners.
Winners
I mean,
were
winners were.
because we weren't prepared for those.
Well, nobody really knew us when we first came
Yeah.
here, and winters were tough here, as you know. And
Yeah.
boy, I mean, you worked as hard as you could. And the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, we had to take a line of credit and put money in it. And the fifth year, we decided if we couldn't make it work that year, it was probably time to think of doing something else. And I don't know, something that year just clicked, and it all turned around. Everything we'd been doing, you know, service-wise, when we first came, we'd go downtown and pick up cars for people that were working
Yep.
and bring it back, service them, wash the car
jeez.
for free of charge, take it back.
We had the ladies'
We had
day.
ladies' days, women on wheels on Wednesdays,
Yep.
and we would give them fresh roses.
Yep.
And oh my
I'd
God,
pick
on
up-
Wednesdays, our business would be.
We had all
packed.
ladies on Wednesdays,
Yeah,
of course.
wanting oil
because We
changes.
got oil change, car wash, and vacuumed, and roses. And
Your
it just
marketing
helped
department.
them-
You had a pretty good marketing
It
department. So
helped
good
them
creative
to
thinking, right?
get their car washed, got
Yeah.
their car vacuumed. I had a lot of oil change services because of vacuuming and doing windows.
Oh, heck
They
yeah.
loved
Yeah.
having their windows done.
Oh yeah.
I'm guessing, but I'm just thinking at that time, a lot of people worked on their own cars. And as people started getting busier and busier and busier and working more and more hours, I would imagine that became more popular, that people would hire it done. Is that true when you think about
Yeah,
that?
and you know, here of course it's hard to find experienced people, and we'd actually brought a couple of people from the west side, and then, you know, we got into the mentorship program with
Yes.
Manson in
95.
95
With the high school?
Yes.
with the high school, and oh my goodness,
was
if
the best.
you want to know what we enjoyed the most was
That
a
was it.
mentorship program, and Ari Veretta was our very first mentor, and he went to work for us
Okay.
for
I
a
sold
long
it.
time.
I
He
sold
did
Ari's
work for us
house.
a little while.
Oh my gosh,
Did
I
ya?
love it.
He's
Yeah.
a great
In McNeil
kid.
Canyon.
He's a great kid.
And so the mentorship program
Great football player.
just, oh yeah, took off big time with Manson. Then Chelan got involved, and it got to where we'd have kids waiting in line for 2 years
Yeah.
to get into the mentorship
We'd have
program.
them in the morning and the
Was that
afternoon.
with Kevin
all day
Amson
long.
and his crew?
yeah, his
Yep.
crew,
Shop?
and then here in Chelan, and
And Mrs. Carleton. took
yeah,
over
Mrs.
this
Carleton, and I love that, you know.
one. It was great.
So let me transition, because that sounds like you've been involved with kids in broadcasting for over 20 years.
Oh,
20
yeah.
It sounds like that's a big part of who you are.
Yeah.
I think
helping kids.
I tell people I think God put me here to watch over our youth.
Well, it means a lot to the people that you touch, right? Like, it's huge.
You know, the broadcasting gave me such a platform to do so many things. And I always yell at broadcasters because you can go call games and walk in and out of a gym. It's the involvement. And, you know, early on, God, we were doing team meals, and I started going up on Fridays and working with troubled kids and just youth that were struggling.
That was the best
and
part, yes.
we were here the first year, and there's a program in Wenatchee called Make It Happen, and it was with the youth, and I got really involved in that. And I went down one day and spoke in front of 250 kids just about my experience of dropping out, and it was working with troubled youth. And man, for a long time I did that. And Chris Spencer, who played for the Hawks that lived here for a while, he would go to Brewster with me on Fridays, and we would talk to troubled kids. And 2 kids had dropped out of school. We got them back, and both of them ended up going on to college and
wow.
having careers.
So
Having
cool.
really great
You know,
careers. It's
it
awesome.
there's just, I can't do enough with and for our youth, and it's always just been a thing. And, you know, 7 Seconds came around, and I kind of skirt around the outskirts of that, but, you know, that, I got a phone call, this will make me emotional. I got a phone call at 4 o'clock one morning, and it was a distressed mom, and she said, my son's in his bedroom, he's going to commit suicide. And she said, would you talk to him? And I said, yeah. And of all things, he'd been a mentor student, and I had his cell phone number. So I called him and I said, dude, I don't know what's going on, I'm coming to get you. And so he got in the car with me, and it was Trenton Stockco. And Trenton had broke his wrist in football and had had 6 surgeries on it. And it was messed up, bad. And it was coming into his senior year, and he was just heartbroken that nobody could fix his wrist, and his wrist, it didn't work. I mean, it literally didn't work. And so Trenton and I took a drive for an hour, and I did one of the dumbest things I've ever done in my life. And I looked, this kid is talking about committing suicide, and I looked him right in the eyes and I said, dude, you got to trust me. I'm going to get you fixed. I guarantee I'm going to get you fixed. And I took Trent back and I dropped him off, and I was driving off, and I go, I just told a kid that's suicidal, I guaranteed him I'll get him fixed. And I went home and I sat down and I started praying to God of what have I done? How am I going to get out of this? And it hit me. One of my childhood friends was the assistant AD at Eastern. And so I called him and I told him the story, and instantly I'm talking to the best wrist surgeon in the nation. I mean, instantly. Wow. And I'm telling him the story, and it was during COVID. And all the hospitals were closed, no surgeries, no nothing. Eastern went to bat and helped us. And I took Nick over, or Trenton, I mean. I took Trenton over to Spokane for the checkup and everything. And
to do the jig.
Yeah, they made a jig for his wrist. And then I got, I had my hip go out, and I couldn't take him for his surgery. And so his parents ended up driving him over, but they did surgery on him. And I told him, I said, I don't know if you'll be able to play football in the spring or in the fall, but I'll get you into basketball. And by God, he played basketball his senior year.
Amazing
and you know what?
Amazing.
Every year he comes home for Mother's Day, he comes and finds me, and we go spend the day, and just, we have a bond forever. And it's like last year I was sitting calling district ball in Wenatchee. I looked down, there's a girl from Waterville sitting at the end of the bench, and she was one of their starters, and she had a torn ACL, and she was sitting down there, and I walked down, put my arm around her, and I said, what's going on? She goes, my senior year, I can't, and she was depressed, and she goes, I'm not going to state with the team. And I had a chat with her, and I said, I'm going to hook you up. And years ago, I met a lady who broke down at my shop on her vacation with their 3 daughters. Her name's Sonia Elliott. Sonia is travels nationwide, scouts girls for basketball, is a motivational speaker. She held the 3-point record at Eastern until just a few years ago. But her story, her and her fiance got hit by a train in Seattle 2 weeks before they were supposed to get married, and he got killed, and she got all tore up. But anyway, I called Sonia and I told her about this girl, and Sonia called the girl and talked to her, sent her a book, sent her a whole bunch of stuff, sent her one of her books, and just the girl called me and goes, oh my God, this woman turned my life around, and she ended up going to state and sitting on the bench. And then the same thing with the girl from Lake Roosevelt was in the same situation. And I don't know how I got hooked up with her. And I called her and talked to her, and I called Sonia, and I'd gone down to district ball the next week, and this great big guy comes up and grabs me and bear hugs me and lifts me off the ground, and he's hugging me, and I'm like, who the heck is this guy? And he says, I'm Sawyer's dad, and he said, you saved my daughter's life. And you know, it's just, we can't give enough to our youth. Yeah. And it just irritates me. I'm really involved right now, I hate to say it, with the transgender issue. I don't have anything against transgender. I just have problems with the way it's set up right now. And
the way it's affecting girls' sports.
In girls' sports, and I've been a really strong advocate with that. This morning, I sent a message to Pam Bondi's office, and I'm trying to get everybody to call Pam Bondi to try and get Pam to get on the state of Washington and correct this. You know, I've talked to WIAA till I'm blue in the face, Shelley Short, the senator, and we all got to get after this and keep after this, because it's a matter of time.
It's powerful stories.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all pretty choked up over here, and powerful. There are angels among us, Karl, and you're definitely one of them. And there's a lot of reasons for that God only knows, but you are you're just your whole spirit about you, the love, the compassion, I don't have that calling, but that's your purpose, and that's pretty powerful.
Well, both of you. I mean, you're a team, and you're all just kind of packaged up to me.
You know, I think God puts us in places for a reason. And 2 winters ago, I was coming home from Liberty Bell from a ball game, and I'd taken her car because the roads were so bad. There was compact snow and ice, and even her FJ and 4-wheel drive, I was skating all the way up there. And on the way back, it was snowing really hard, and I was behind the Brewster bus, and I looked in my mirror, and this car's coming up on me to pass me. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And this Toyota passes me, pickup truck, Tacoma passes me, loses control. Next thing I know, he just missed hitting the back of the Brewster bus. I look up, and he is between me and the Brewster bus, pointed at me.
The wrong way.
And we're going 50 miles an hour, and I'm going, Jesus, I'm going to die. His truck grabbed traction and spun around, and the last thing I see is it goes off the road, and the truck goes airborne. And just this big cloud, and I'm slowing down, and I'm going, are you kidding me? And it barrel rolls 3 times in the air, and it comes down on the lane next to me. I mean, it slams down. It shook her FJ almost off the road. I slammed the brakes on. I don't have a coat on or anything. I bail out. It's 19 degrees. The truck's upside down. Smoke's starting to pour out of it. And these people are driving by. They're just driving by, and it's like slow motion. And I'm sitting there watching all these people driving by, and I'm running to this car, and I'm going, God, please don't let it be a fatality. And I get to the truck, and the doors are caved in, and there's a kid in the truck yelling, get me out, get me out, get me out. And he had a slider, and he couldn't come out through the slider. He didn't have shoes on, nothing. And there's smoke just pouring out of the truck, and I can't get it into the truck. And the kid is just panicking. And you know God's with you sometimes. I walked around the passenger side to the rear quarter window. You know, it was a half cab, and it just had that small quarter window. And I reached up, and with everything I had in me, I punched that glass and blew the glass out of it, got the kid out of the truck. He's got no shoes on. And I look at him, and I go, you were just in the ball game I just called. And I'm just standing like, oh my God. And Don Beckard stopped, and he called the state patrol and had an ambulance coming. And I gave the kid my phone. He called his parents, and they said, just get going, because I was freezing. I stayed there until he was okay. We got his coat and got him okay. And man, the kid was shook up.
But nothing else.
He was tore up. And I came home, and about midnight, my phone rings, and this lady's crying. And she goes, you saved my son's life. And I said, how'd you get my number? And she said, everybody knows who you are. And the funny thing was, I just had a couple of cuts on my hand.
Barely
I mean,
any
it didn't even hurt
scrapes
my
at
hand.
all. It's like
And I swear I could not blow one of those windows out for anything.
Yeah, well,
any
And
other
then,
time,
you know,
like your adrenaline and
A couple of weeks later, a lady had brought this jacked up Expedition into my shop with a big jacked up diesel Expedition. She wants to buy it for her daughter, just turned 16. And I go, no, this is not for your daughter. It had great big balloon tires on it and stuff. And I go, she goes, I want you to do a purchase check. And I said, no, I refuse to. I said, you do not buy this for your daughter. Next day, I'd gone to Brewster and I'm coming home. I'm coming up the hill by the ponds. I look up and what is barrel rolling?
Come
That
on.
Expedition is barrel rolling.
see what I mean? Angels Among Us.
get
He's
to
in these
Aswell.
places.
The thing lands and it smashes the roof flat.
the girl from
And
Madison.
I pull up and I go, oh my God.
that
And
rig.
she was in there.
Yeah.
The passenger in the
Two
front
other young
seat,
kids.
it had broke his pelvis. He'd hit the windshield. He had a concussion. I'm getting these kids out, and they had 3 cats with them. And I mean,
They had
everybody
went
gets
to the
out.
vet's office in Brewster.
Oh, in Brewster.
Yeah, and they all get out. None of them are dressed appropriately. All of them are in shock. And one's got a broken arm, the other one had broken. Anyway, I load these kids up and I run them to the hospital and I take them into ER and drop them off. And I get on the phone because I knew the girl's mom and I called her and I said, by the way, your daughter's in ER in Chelan. What happened? I said, exactly what I told you. She rolled the Expedition. And, you know, that was just another time I got home and I thank
Jeez.
God for
Come
putting
on.
me there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I think you
been
you have a
few
connection to
places
kids.
that-
It's not, you know,
That's
it's
pretty
just
amazing.
funny. And now the kid from Liberty Bells, Brody Barnhart, who is dating Tegan Byquist, and
Yeah.
I'm sure they're going to get married. But what a small world. You know,
Yeah.
I held Tegan when she was a little tiny baby and watched her grow up, and I couldn't be happier. I mean, it's a full circle
Yeah, yeah.
that how things happen.
Let's talk about your broadcasting you mentioned. Like, what are some of your greatest moments of broadcasting
Oh
over
my
those
gosh,
20 years?
State basketball.
Oh man, I mean, just so many times. You know, so many. When I first started in 2002, that was just. I told Cozy one day. I said, "Hey, if you ever need a broadcaster, I've never done it." Well, Dave Spanger at that time
Exactly.
was the broadcaster, and
That was funny.
one Saturday morning, I get a call, and it's Steve Byquist, and he goes, "Hey, Spanger's stuck in a snowstorm. Can you come here, and we're going to teach you how to call basketball?" I go, "When?" And he goes,
Now.
"Well, there's a game tonight." And he goes, "So we need you to come down here." Well, at that time, we had an old toolbox, a literal toolbox
Literally.
that had a bag phone in it and a magnetic antenna. I mean, it was
Yeah.
as
It was-
hokey could be.
Wow.
And so I went to Cozy, and Clint Strand was there, and Clint goes, "This is how you hook it up, blah, blah." And he goes,
I remember
"Get
Clint.
to Brewster early." And I go, "Okay, but what am I doing?" He goes, "Oh, you're doing the girls' district championship game tonight." That's my first basketball
That's
game.
your rookie break
That's my
That's
rookie
it.
break. So I get there, I get everything
He's
hooked up, and I
nervous.
call Cozy, and I go, "What do I do?" And they go, "Talk."
You were worried about our mic?
Yeah.
Come on, man.
And I'm just like, "Talk about what?" And they go, "What you see." And I go, "Okay." And so as tip-off got close, he goes, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, they're starting to do starting lineups." He goes, "Then do the starting lineups." I go, "Okay, I got a roster." So I read the starting lineups and did that. And he goes, "Now what?" And I go, "Well, they're getting ready to tip off." And then I was just silent. He goes, "Karl, what's going on?" And I go, "Well, they tipped off." And he goes, "Talk." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "Talk. You got to talk." I open my mouth, and the rest is
It's
history.
like
came out.
that's when it started
It clicked.
kicked in and it went. Whoa.
Well, I did that one
And
game
just
that year,
boom,
and that
called
was
the game.
it. And then the next year they said, "Hey, you want to fill in?" And I think I did. At that time, we traveled and did games everywhere. We weren't
Right.
just Chelan, Brewster. And I think that year I did 68 ball games.
Wow.
Wow.
And it was just all the time. And then
Going.
And then it was just from then on. And then I did football for 17 years. Did football and basketball, but
Well, it means a lot to those kids, you know, and you don't know it. Maybe you do, but there's a lot of those tapes, a lot of those broadcasts have been taped, and those kids have those games, and you know, to them, that's a big deal.
It's
like
huge.
to,
They hear
to
their
hear
name
somebody
on the
passionate
radio.
that treats it like it's a
And
professional
tell what
game.
they've done.
And when
Yeah.
you hear it, it's like you wouldn't know that it's not a professional game.
Exactly.
That's what's really fun about audio tape. where-
Every year I'd give the kids CDs of the state games.
Yeah, exactly.
And give
Right.
each kid a CD, you know, and I'd speak at the sports banquets. And 2 years ago, NFHS, Eli Sports contacted me. WSU's got a broadcast program.
Yeah.
There's not any play-by-play broadcasters left, not very many of them. And so I started training 4 and 5 guys from the WSU program. They asked me to do it this year, and I just said I just don't have the time right now. So
Okay, what do you do for fun?
basketball.
yeah, obsessed.
You know, it's funny. I
I mean, because I used to ride Harleys with you. You still doing that?
no, we sold our
sold
Harley, and
Harley.
I
Nice.
got into my next passion, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you know, just the whole basketball thing.
Yeah.
We got
Basketball
when
was
only
a-
7 seconds was first starting.
Yeah.
One of my friends, Dana Haynes, was a news anchor for one of the TV stations in Spokane, and I started telling her one day about it. Next thing I know, we got Kristen down on the basketball court getting interviewed for only 7 seconds,
Kristen Mall, right?
and that kicked that off with
Cool.
that, getting them
Right.
involved in that, and you know, it's just been a lot of crazy times.
You know.
The first few years, I was riding the officials all the time.
Oh my God.
I was in trouble on press row, and
Oh, boy.
That
oh
was
my!
funny.
I'd walk in the Sun Dome, and the officials come over, and the guy who ran the Sun Dome would
He's
go,
like,
"You can't be
"Watching
standing
you."
up today. You can't be standing on your chair. You can't be doing this." And I'll never forget one of the championship games. As I walked in, they go, and I walked over. He goes, "No team colors on the floor today. None of your antics. Blah blah." And I go, "Okay." Well, I walked out and sat down, and this great big guy comes up and he stands behind me. And I turn around and he goes, "I'm going to keep you in your seat." And during the game, I went to stand up one time on my chair, and the guy goes, pushes me back down. But at halftime, there was
They had
this,
you covered.
There's a bouncer for Karl.
there was this,
They had to have one.
this big, tall lady who played in the WNBA was an official, and she came over and she goes, "My husband plays in the NBA, and he's sitting up there listening to you and how bad you're hacking on us." And I go, "Well, call a good game," and I won't, you know. And I said, "I got to tell you, if I ever get a ball comes to me, I'm shooting it." And I'd always said at half
Oh
court.
my gosh.
Part way in the third quarter, a ball bounces right into my hands.
And
And I'm sitting there and I stand up with this ball and I'm talking in my headset and I'm like getting lined up to shoot, and she comes over and she's going, "Give me the ball. Give me the ball." And she's looking at me and she's smiling. And I'm looking at her. I'm really contemplating on doing this. And
half quarter.
Clay Gebers from Brewster is going to inbound the ball, and he's standing there laughing. And she goes, "Give me the ball." I hand her the ball. Clay inbounds it, and he turns around, and he almost fell down because he's laughing so hard. And she turned around, she was laughing. And so then we won that championship game. Well, in the fourth quarter, I stood up on my chair, and I ripped my shirt off, and I had a red shirt underneath.
Brewster
And everybody
shirt.
on press row just went
And then
crazy
he was on top
laughing.
of the chair or the table.
The chair there,
The
and
chair,
then
and it's like,
I told
God, oh, it was
the last
funny.
time Brewster won the championship, I think in 2021, I told the kids, I said, "If you win today, I'm going to stand on top of the table on press row." They win the game, I'm on top of the table with my hands over my head clapping.
Oh
and
my
this lady
gosh.
comes over and she goes, "You got to get off the table." I turned around and I go, "I'm not getting off the table." And King Fight or one of the TV stations is taking my picture, and I stood up. That's probably one of my
Yeah.
favorite moments
That's
is
great.
standing on that table. And that was just,
Goodness.
you know, some good
Debbie,
times.
Debbie,
Oh, we
Debbie.
had some great times at state, let me tell you.
You know what? You remember Scott Brundage?
Oh, yeah.
So he was
Yes.
amazing for our football team. He did a lot of stuff for our back in the 80s. And when he was sick with cancer at the end, his wife talked to me, and I had taken one of the cassette tapes and digitized it that he did in our Tacoma Dome semifinal game. And so he was an amazing announcer. And
He had a great voice.
He wanted to listen to the tape while he was passing. You know, then he passed away not that long after that. But his wife told me, you know, and this is probably something you hadn't thought about, all those games that you did for the kids, Scott Brundage wanted to listen to that game at the end of his life.
Wow.
I mean, so it's a powerful,
it is.
it's a powerful connection between the broadcasters and the announcers and the coaches and the players.
You know, like I said earlier, I see broadcasters come in, they don't get involved with the kids, and I don't know how you do it. You know, I've got kids now that I call their games that have got kids playing, and the relationships that I have, and I try every morning to get up and contact at least 5 kids.
Oh, they
And
game day
you know,
texts,
the most
positive.
the most powerful four things you can say to a kid is "I believe in you," and I say that to kids all the time. And you know, they don't hear it. And I tell kids I love them all the time. I hug kids all the time.
Would
and,
you stop making me cry?
you know, they are our future.
Yeah.
And I was laughing the other night because I was in Buddy's having a beer, and I was by myself, and I was sitting at the bar, and I was watching college ball. And one of my old customers walks up, and he goes, "I just got to ask something." I go, "What?" And he goes, "How do you see the game right now?" And I go, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "You must see a game different." And I go, "No, sitting here," I said, "I watch it just like you guys." But I said, at home, I'll sit if I start, you know, I'll sit and I won't call the game, but I see the game differently. Probably like Desiree sees volleyball different when she's coaching. And the game, I don't know, for some reason, I'm able to watch basketball at speed and slow it down in my head.
It's
And,
amazing.
you know, sometimes I'm talking so fast that I'm like, how in the heck am I doing this? And right with the ball.
Have a little out of body experience.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know how I do it. But I'm weird. When I go to a game, before the game, I'll go sit by myself and just get
He gets in
totally
his zone.
focused, and people come up and start talking to me. I'll go, leave me alone. And anybody that knows me just stays away.
It's that muscle memory you've got to figure it out, right?
Oh boy.
You got to, it takes
Let me
a
ask you this
focus.
about kids. You've been close to them. Has there anything standing out that's changed in kids over the last 20 years, from your perspective?
I think the only thing I think in the last 20 years is recently, I think we're failing our youth with all they went through in COVID. And, you know, I get so mad listening to people say our kids are okay and our kids aren't okay. And last year when I was going to regionals up in Omak, I was talking to a second grade teacher, and as I was going in, she was taking money, and the lady ahead of me said something about, "Oh, our kids are fine." And I said, "No, they're not." And the lady goes, "I teach second grade, and you are correct. Our kids are struggling." And she goes, "Just because they're back in school, everybody thinks things are normal," and they're not. I mean, if you really talk to a kid and start asking them questions, things aren't normal.
Trauma is trauma.
Well,
That
I don't think
was
it's
traumatic.
just. I don't think it's just kids. I think COVID.
Are you not okay? Are you not?
I've never
do you
been
need-
okay.
I
I'm
believe
continuously not okay.
in you.
Thank you. Are you proud of me too? I need some affirmations. God dang it. No, I think it's just I think the psychological effect is unknown. I mean, I think we're too recent from COVID, and maybe there's other things that are going along. But whether it's work ethic or commitment or pride,
social anxiety.
social
now.
anxiety. Yeah, I mean, I think the work from home concept is good for a lot of people. But I don't know if it's good for the psychology of people. My wife included. She works from home, and she likes it in a lot of ways. But she's also going, man, I never had any social anxiety before I started working at home. She was very social, and you just do something over and over and over again, and eventually you look up and maybe things are a little different. You didn't realize it, and that's anxiety all of a sudden. So I don't know. I mean, it was such a unique time in the world.
I would come home, you know, when I was doing football and basketball, I'd leave August, literally leave the house in August, and I wouldn't be home until March. And I'd knock on the door coming home from state and slide my driver's license in, and she'd let me in. But, you know, there's just so much time, and I watch all these kids and these families and all the time it takes and the commitment. And, you know, these kids work hard, and people forget that I hear people say that athletes are spoiled elite brats. They gotta do their homework and keep their grades up. They're out late to practice or up early in the gyms. I mean, they work their tails off, and they deserve the recognition that they get. And we don't give them enough recognition.
Now, what do you feel about the everybody gets a red ribbon concept?
Oh, not at all. You know, those kids get in the real world and they find out there are winners and there are losers. And, you know, competition's part of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what we were talking about. You know, my kid lost his junior. He broke his tibia and fibia and dislocated his ankle, and that was hard on him. You know, not as hard as COVID on those kids, but because he was able to come back and play. And he was a pretty good athlete for sure, really good athlete. And his senior year was super important. But all those kids that got ripped out of that without a physical injury just because of whatever. It affected them for sure. One of my questions that I have for you is like, would you change anything when you look back at this career that you've had and the Quik Auto for 28 years and broadcasting for 20 plus years?
I wish I was younger because, I still got a lot of energy and drive. I still, I did 4 or 5 games this year, and it's just funny. I can sit right back down, and now I'm going to go to work for the Wenatchee Bighorn.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
What is that?
They're a semi-pro team out of Wenatchee, basketball team. Last year, it's at the state tournament. I worked for a girl named Jamie Council, and she's a big-time broadcaster, and she does all the Eastern stuff now. She does stuff in the Tri-Cities, and last year she contacted me and said, "Hey, come down and do some Bighorn basketball." And so I did all the home games here.
A couple games down there.
And then here a month ago, she contacted me and said, "Hey, why don't you come do some games with me?" One of the other radio stations is doing some of the games, and we've got 6 or 7 home games, and so I signed up for that. Going to go do some Bighorn ball, but
So this is your fun.
It is. He enjoys it.
basketball.
Basketball is his fun.
Now, what are you doing while he's off doing all this?
I've been trying to figure that out. It was work.
Better get a Trans Am.
I kept the Quik Auto going while he take off for basketball. And so,
Boy, a couple of stories about football. Kim Kelly. So there's a playoff game. Brewster's got a playoff game in Pomeroy, and it's during the fires. And Kim Kelly's going to fly me over there. Well, I got permission to land on a private airstrip. So we fly over there and all the smoke and everything. And we get there and we go to land. Well, Kim goes down to land and he goes, "What is on the runway?"
We're looking down.
And we're like, "What is it?" And we get almost to land. There's
moving.
1,200 sheep on the runway.
Yeah.
Oh.
And Kim goes, and we go back up in the air. Well, the athletic director from Pomeroy's there. So he gets on the runway and he drives down the runway in front of us and spreads the sheep, and we land. And so I go and do this ball game, and we go back, and the AD drives us up there. He goes, "Okay, get your plane all ready to go." And he said, "Let me know." And he said, "I'll drive down the runway." So
Did you take a video of this?
No,
We should have.
we should have, but he drives
like-
down the runway. The sheep are parting, and we take off and
Come
flew
on.
back
It was
home.
hilarious.
Oh, it was hilarious. And then I flew to Ritzville to do a football game, and we get to Ritzville, and they're chip sealing the airstrip, so it's closed. So I call from the plane. I call the airstrip, and I go, "Hey, are you guys going to open a runway up at all or not?" They go, "Well, we had planned on it. Do you need to land?" I go,
Kinda.
"Yeah, I need to broadcast a football game."
Or like,
blah,
is
blah."
I-90 open?
And the guy goes,
Right.
"Well, just keep flying." We circled for over an hour.
Oh, God.
And
Just
the guy
keep
goes,
flying?
"Huh?"
Just keep flying?
Yeah,
you
we
said?
just kept flying over the
Just keep
airport.
flying.
And finally the guy goes out and pulls one of the X's off the airport, and we landed. Dwight Flugraf, I don't know if you know Dwight. Dwight picks us up, and I hadn't seen Dwight since in the early 70s. And I'm sitting in the back seat, and I'm looking at, I never saw him when I got in the car because we were running a little bit late. And I look in the mirror, and I go, "God, you remind me of this big, ugly guy from Peshastin." And Dwight starts laughing. He turns around and he looks at me and goes, "You remember me?" I go, "Yeah." I said, you're Big Bird. I always called him Big Bird.
Yep.
Well, you said a word, fire. You had some experiences with the local fires too.
Oh my goodness, more than I ever cared.
Another example of your selfless. I want to hear it from your perspective.
Right?
The Carleton Complex Fire, that was tough. I mean,
That was really tough.
that was really tough. And
For people that don't know it, could you give them a little?
well, the complex fire started up the Medhow and burned down the Medhow, burned basically Pateras up, a lot of Brewster, and thank goodness it didn't burn the substation Brewster, but I mean it dishomed everybody, and it was a mess. The morning after it had gone through and burned Pateras and everything, I got up early in the morning, and it was during the week, and I told Debbie, "We're shutting the shop down." And so I went to Safeway, and I backed into Safeway, and I ran in, and I said, "I need like 50 cases of water. I don't have any money." And the manager goes, load him up. And they load me up with 50 cases of water. Well, I started up the highway and I couldn't get through. And so I came back and went up around through Mansfield and came down the backside into Brewster. And it was like just something you can't, I can't even describe.
It was unreal.
Dan
It
Webster,
was
who I've
unreal.
known all my life, the owner of Webster Furniture, is standing on his sidewalk in front of his business with the broom going like this. There's this much ash on the sidewalk.
everywhere.
And I walked up and he's just in total shock. And I'm walking around. Everybody's just like zombied out. And the guy I grew up working for is sitting at the post office in his Suburban with his cat. And I walked up and I'm standing in front of him. I've known the guy all my life and he's just dead staring. And I walked up and I tapped on the window and he looked at me and I said, Bill, are you okay? The man was in the middle of moving from one house to another. Both houses burnt down. Each house had half his, he's sitting there, he looked at me and goes, I have nothing
But a cat.
but my cat and what I have on me. And I said, give me a list of what you need. And so he wrote a few things down and I grabbed that. Anyway, I went, I started looking around where everybody's at and everybody's just, there's all these people, they're homeless, just walking around.
Yeah.
And everybody's like zombies. And
And
I
you
went
don't know where
down
to
to
go.
what's now the Boys and Girls Club. It was a rec center then and it was locked up. And the city administrator I grew up with, and he's down there. I said, we need to open this up so people can come here, so these people have got somewhere to go. And he goes, I don't have the authorization to open it up. And I said, Lynn, we got people walking around everywhere. They're homeless. We got to get them someplace to go. And he goes, I can't do it. And I looked at it and I said, either key the door, I'm going to kick the glass
I
out
was
of the
just
door.
gonna say,
And
I already
said,
broke a window
we're
over
going
here."
in there one way or another. And he goes, I'll unlock it. You're taking. I said, I don't care. And so we opened up the relief center, and man, there was people literally living there, and it was just, it's like Chelan. Everybody just came together,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
every day I would load
Truckloads of
stuff
stuff.
up and
Yeah.
take stuff up there
It was
every day.
That's the beautiful silver lining of humanity. When something tragic like that happens, that's so devastating. I mean, that was, you went to Pateras and everyone's barbecuing at the school and feeding each other, and it was, bacon and eggs every morning, and it was, everyone came together.
You know, a couple days went by, and I thought, man, I need to raise some money. And so I got on the radio and started talking about it. Well, then I started posting stuff on social media, and I had this lady call me from Minnesota, from a big company, and she goes, I don't know how she saw my article or something. She goes, we're going to send you $5,000. And I talked to her for about another 5 minutes, and she said, I just tore the check up. I'm sending you $15,000. In 2 days, I collected $250,000, and it just kept going and going, and we collected $1 million. And so then we had to sit down and we formed a group, and we would meet every Tuesday, and we started getting everybody's information through the school districts, and we started writing down and tracking where everybody was, who lost homes, blah, 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 blah.
Oh my gosh.
And we worked at this, and we started, oh my God, I'd sit and write, I'd sign checks, stacks of checks this big, because we started out first, everybody got, I think we gave everybody $170. And I mean, we were giving out thousands of checks for $170. Money kept coming in. It took us over a year to give out the money, and we helped a lot of people get into homes. And then what we had left, we put into a fund that started getting interest on it and stuff, and people were able to keep working off that. And that fund went on for quite a while. But I was amazed. A radio station in the Tri-Cities had me on air one day, and they came up and they damn near filled one of the packing sheds and brought us cash. They brought us supplies and food. It was incredible. And yeah, and so at that time I was building a basketball court for the kids in Brewster, and I was working with Nike. So I called Nike and I said, hey, this is what happened in my community. Will you donate some stuff? No, we can't do it. I get on social media and I put up this big slam to Nike on social media. And I go off on Nike. I come home a couple days later for lunch. We come home for lunch, and Debbie goes, there's something on the answering machine. I go over. It's the CEO of Nike. And he goes, Mr. Word, I need you to give me a phone call immediately. So I call, and he goes, I need you to take your post off social media. He goes, you were making us look bad. And I go, dude, you got to help me out. You got to do something. And he goes, what do you need? I said, I don't care if you send me returns, seconds, blems.
Yeah.
We need clothing. Dude,
Yeah.
you got to help us. And he goes, well, you take the post down. I said, when you help me, I'll take the post down. 2 days
Leverage,
later,
baby.
I'm at work, and the town treasurer in Pateros calls me, and she goes, Karl, I need you to run up here real quick. And I said, why? And she goes, there's 2 semis out here full of stuff, and you got to sign for it. And I drove up there, and Nike sent 141 boxes of clothing. And I called the guy, and I said, I'm taking the post down. But yeah, they sent 141
Shoes.
cases of stuff. I mean, it filled an entire room, and I called Adidas, and they sent me like some basketballs and some stuff like that, which that was nice because I thought, what a waste. But then Pateros was right in the middle of starting an AAU program, didn't have any basketballs. And so I gave them I took all the basketballs, and that got their program going on. I want to tell you another real quick story.
I love it, man. Powerful.
I was a chamber
So powerful.
president in Brewster for 3 years because they didn't have a chamber president. And we did that salmon derby. And during the fires, somebody had given me cases and cases of Bibles, brand new Bibles, and they're in the back of my truck. So I'm running the salmon derby, and I would get up, Stacy Byquist loaned me a jet ski and trailer. I'd get up at 1 a.m., drive to Brewster, and check all the boats before they went in the water. And then during the day, I'd go out in the jet ski and check the boats, blah, blah. And so it was like the third day of this, and I'm just beat. I was getting like 2 hours of sleep. I'm exhausted, and it's like 3 in the afternoon. I'm going home. I just coming into Pateros, and I blow a tire on the jet ski trailer. I don't have a spare. I don't have a jack. I don't have nothing. So I call Stacy, and I go, dude, I blew a tire. And he said, I'll bring you a tire. So I'm sitting there, and I'm on the side of the road, and I go, how in the heck am I going to jack this thing up? And I grabbed the trailer, and I could pick it up. And I go, man, I'm looking around. There's no rocks or anything. And I literally look up, and I go, God, help me. Please, I need help. Please, God, hear me. The back of my truck's open. I look up, and there's all those boxes of Bibles. And I look at them, and I go over, and I grab a case of Bibles. I come over. It's the right height for the trailer. So I pick the trailer up, kick the box of Bibles under it. Stacy shows up, change the tire, throw the Bibles in the back, and off I go. A couple days later, I'm watching a preacher in Brewster. They lost all their Bibles. And he says, man, we're trying to raise money.
In the fire?
Yeah, they had lost all their Bibles, and he said, man, we need Bibles really bad. And he said, we're praying on this. I sneak up there in the middle of the night, and in the stairwell, I dump off all these cases of Bibles. The next day, he's on social media going, God answered our prayers. Where did all these Bibles come from? And I didn't tell him for about 6 months, and he was in the gym one day when I was doing a ball game, and I walked over to him, and I said, God gifted you some Bibles. And he looked at me and goes, it was you. And I said, yeah. And I told him the story, and he goes, unbelievable. But you know, if you listen, he speaks. And I hear him. I don't know. And things just happen if you open your hearts and your mind. There's people all around us every day that we don't know their story.
Yeah. Well, that's a powerful positive of social media that you've used for the good. I mean, a lot of people, there's a lot of bad things that happen in social media too, but these are some damn good examples of some good things. And thank you for being you. I want to get to what you're excited about now. What is that?
Yes.
Before I got married, I was big into racing motocross, and when I ended up having a child and doing the right thing and getting married at 17, I gave up my motocross career. And it was a big part of my life, and it was something I was kind of gifted at. And I don't know, about 4 years ago, a friend of mine grew up with that still races, and he races professional. He called me one day and goes, hey, come to my house. And I went to his house and we walked out. He's got like over 1,000 bikes. He just opened, he's got a museum in East Wenatchee.
Okay, I was going to say.
And
Incredible.
so I went to his house and we walked out in his garage and he had like 30 bikes there, a lot of them factory bikes and stuff. And
I never heard of a bull taco before.
he says, pick a bike. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, pick a bike, any bike you want. And I stand there and I go, well, I'll take that one. I go, what am I doing with it? He goes, you're going to take it home with you. And he said, you and Garrett Evans are always run your mouths that you want to race again. He goes, Garrett's never done it. I think you will. And so I brought the bike home and Debbie goes, I
I
come
was
home
going to say,
with
what
it.
did Debbie have to
Oh,
say?
Debbie goes, what is that? And I go,
What's that?
that is a motocross bike. And what are you going to do with that? And I go, well, I'm going to go ride it. And I went out in the garage. I still have this box of gear from the 80s.
Yes.
It fits. My boots, my pants, my jersey, everything
You haven't
fits.
changed.
And so I get up one day and there's a private track up in Brewster that I rode on when I was a kid. And so I got up and I told her, I said, I'm going to go up and see if I can ride today. And she goes, you don't do this alone. You take
Make
somebody
sure
with you.
somebody's with you.
And I go, yeah, okay. So I'd head off. And
Says
I go,
every mom.
Says every mom, but did he listen?
So I get in the truck and I take off and I'm like, there's no way I'm taking anybody with me because if I can't do this, I don't want to look like an idiot, so.
Get out of here.
So I go up and get the bike out and fire the bike up and I get on the bike. And I've been on a motocross bike in 48 years. And I get on the bike and I kind of rode around a little bit. And so I ride a lap, I ride 2 laps and I'm like, wow, everything's still there. Pretty soon I've knocked 5 laps down and I had to stop because I was hyperventilating because I was so excited I could still ride. So I stopped after 5 laps and man, I was breathing hard and I'm like, God, I can still do this. And so I rode 8 or 10 more laps that day and I came home. And she goes, wow, you're in one piece. I go, yeah. I said, this is kind of cool. Well, I was sore the next day. So then the third day, I called a friend who taught me how to ride when I was a kid, and he does professional photography for rodeos. And I said, hey, would you come up and take some pictures? I may never ride again. And I went up and I
I want to
rode.
document this.
I went up and I rode
Jumps.
15 laps that day.
Superman?
And
Are
I
we
went up one
Supermaning
more
yet?
time and I rode, and that morning when I left, Debbie goes, if you wreck, I'm going to kill you. And I go, okay. Well, I'd rode a few laps and I was getting, kind of getting the feel for it pretty good. And so I was coming up to this jump, and as I got to the jump, there's a left-hand turn right after the jump. And I thought, well, I get in the air, I'm going to use my weight and get myself set up for that left-hand turn. Problem was, I ended up in the soft dirt and I just face planted, went over the bars and I face planted. And I'm laying there in the dirt and I'm going, the first thing I can hear is her going, I'm going to kill you. And I'm laying there and the bike's still running. And I get up and I've got this big wad of grass just jammed in my helmet. I get up and I'm like, wow! Pulled the grass out, picked the bike up and rode again. I came home and I go, that's it, I'm hooked. So then I started looking, I knew so I wanted to ride vintage, start racing vintage again. And I wanted the same bike as the last bike I had. I start searching, I can't find one. Well, I finally find one, a kid in East Wenatchee's got one. And I called him and talked to him, he goes, it ain't for sale. I called that poor kid every Sunday at 7 o'clock. Every Sunday. Then I started calling him Sundays and Wednesdays. And finally one Sunday, this went on all summer. And I called him and he goes, you're not going to stop? And I go, no. And he goes, I'll sell you the bike. So I drove down, bought the bike. I now have, 6 bikes?
6 of them. I call them mini bikes because they need many pieces.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of restoring 2 for myself and 1 for my friend that has a museum. But so they started building, they want to build an international motocross museum in Chicago. And it started a few years ago, and this guy's been collecting bikes. He's got somewhere around $20 million worth of vintage bikes. These are bikes that have won world championships. These are rare bikes. And so the first year they had this big fundraiser in Chicago. Well, I was going to go, and I'd hurt my hip, and I couldn't go. So then the next year, I flew out. Well, I get there and I want to set with Roger DeCoster, who's a childhood hero. And I find myself in this place with all these former world champions, big name guys that, I'm like, God, I'm just in a
Kid in the
dream.
candy store.
Yes, this
And
is like
so,
inner child.
Yes.
work
I had
big
bought,
time.
I had made a huge donation so I could sit with Roger DeCoster. Well, I get there and DeCoster is going to Redbud because they're having a race that weekend. And so he's not going to show up. And so I get there and I went up and met the guy who's building it and all this, and met his wife, and we just clicked. And his wife goes, God, Karl, you were supposed to sit with Roger. I don't know where I'm going to put you. Where do you want to be? And I looked at her, I said, you know what? I'm just honored to just be here. You put me in the back. I don't care. And she goes, really? She goes, everybody else I'm trying to move is just throwing a fit and wants their money back. I said, you know what? I'm just glad to be here and just get to be a small part of this. And so the first morning I got up and the thing opened like at 10 o'clock. Well, I was walking from the motel. My boss put me up in a suite in the motel right across from the parking lot from where this thing's at. So I'm walking and these two guys are walking. I don't know them. They turn out to be two East Coast pro riders. And so we walk over the place and I go, oh, it's closed. And the guy inside sees them and opens the door. So like, I go inside and everything's set up and there's only like 4 of us in the entire building walking around, and I start meeting all these big name people, and man, they're just like a family. They're just world class.
You are just kid in a candy store.
Down to earth. And
he
so
was videotaping this whole thing, so when he got home I got to see all this. Look at this bike and this bike.
So the night I got there,
And this guy. And I'm like,
the night I got there, it was late and everybody's in the bar and getting ready to leave or go to bed. And so I went up to my room. Well, next morning, come down early, and all these guys are having breakfast. Well, one of the guys named Joe Abadi runs this big time podcast. Well, him and a bunch of guys, and I recognized them, were having breakfast, so I paid for their breakfast. And nobody knew who paid for the breakfast. So while I'm in the thing early in the morning, Joe's shooting a podcast, and I'm taking a video, doing a video. Well, we cross paths, and he's in the middle of his podcast, and he stops and he goes, hey, did you buy our breakfast? And I go, yeah. And so he interviews me on his podcast, and we shook hands. We're great friends
now
now.
they speak every day.
And anyway, so it comes dinner time, and I went back to the back table, and I asked Cindy, I go, where am I sitting back? Because there's a bunch of spots in the back empty. I said, am I sitting back here? And she goes, you know what, Karl? You are such a nice person. You're going to sit up front. They walked me up front. I sat right at the front table in the very center with Harry Everts, who is a European 2-time world champion, his family, his son Liam, who currently races pro, and then a lady named Martina Falva-Koop from Belgium. And I sat with those people, and I mean, just unbelievable.
Karl, I feel like your middle name is right place, right time.
So I sit
Okay.
there and I meet all these people, and I have lunch with them, and we all just click. I mean, all these big time people that I never ever thought I'd even get to meet, but I enjoyed it, and I got really involved. I've done a lot of fundraising stuff for him, and the guy that's doing it just loves me. Matter of fact, Debbie made these shirts. I fly the IMM logo. I got permission to fly in on everything. And then this last summer they had a thing in Chicago just for the big donors. And so I flew out for that, and he had rented a park in Chicago, and we go there, and there's probably $4 million worth of bikes in this park, and it's funny as heck because they're setting up, and we got there early. I met a guy that I'd never met before. He's from Georgia. We hooked up and went to this thing together, and we got there early. And you know me, I can't just stand still, and they're unloading bikes and setting up and stuff. So I walk over to the trucks and I go, hey, what can I do? And the guys are, who are you? I go, oh, I'm Karl Word, blah, blah. And the guy's handing me bike stands. He goes, these go to these bikes. And so I go out and we're, setting the bikes up, and this guy comes up and he goes, who are you? And I said, oh, I'm Karl Word. And pretty soon I'm sitting there, I'm holding this bike up, and I'm sitting there looking at this bike going, unbelievable. I've seen this thing in every magazine. It's a world championship bike. We're going to fire this thing up today for the first time in 30 years. And I'm holding it up in the air while they're trying to find the stand. And I got like 6 stands there. And the guy, they're digging. And I go, it's this stand. He goes, how do you know? I go, well, I know how the frame is
I'm
on
a
this.
parts guy.
And it turned out to be that stand. But I had to laugh because as you entered the park, there was a great big sign. And it said, Field of Dreams. Please do not touch the bikes. Well, Terry Good, who owns all this, he shows up, and where's Karl? Sitting on top of a couple of the bikes, winking the throttles, and I'm on and off all the bikes, and everybody's going, hey, you can't do that.
You're not
And
supposed to do that.
Terry walks up, and he goes, only you. Only you, Karl.
Well, if I can stand on a bench at a high school basketball game, I can get on a bike. You don't know me.
So, it's just, it has been so cool. And that day I had lunch with a guy named Sasaki Osuka. And he flew from Japan. He doesn't speak hardly any English, but he invented the Honda CR Elsinore. He's the originator of that. And so I'd sit down for lunch, and Sasaki sits next to me, and they had posters of him. And so I was sitting there, and we got to talking back and forth. Nice guy. Ended up spending all afternoon with him. But we're sitting there, and I said, will you sign a poster? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, what's your name? And I said, Karl. He couldn't say it. He's going, I spelled it out, K-A, and he's going,
No, those letters don't go together.
He just couldn't get it. And so he wrote it out, and then on my tube that the poster's in, he wrote K, then a couple of commas, A, he wrote my name out that way. Well, about 3 weeks ago, a guy had put a post up, and he put a picture of Sasaski's poster, and he goes, I was one of the lucky ones, got mine signed. And Sasaki saw it, and he put a big heart on it. Well, I put mine up and showed that I got that. And, you think people don't really remember you. Guys like that, they won't remember you. Sasaki puts on it, under mine, he puts, Karl, I remember K, and he spelled it out again. And, I just sat there and looked at that, and I go, this guy sees thousands of people at these events, and he remembers me?
Yeah.
Well, that's it. You've lived an amazing live so far, and I think it's just getting warmed up.
I know. I'm just telling you right now, I gotta go, so y'all can stay. But
and I think
I got
also,
mom duties.
Well, and I think Karl, you've been a lucky man. You've been a generous man. You have an abundant mindset. But probably marrying Debbie's your luckiest move, is what I'm guessing.
It is. And
Balanced him out.
Yeah.
I think we need a balance for you, and I think it's
Yes,
working out.
I think
Debbie.
at times, honestly, I don't know if I'd be alive if it wasn't for Debbie. Just
I
wild
take
and
pretty good care of
wild
him.
and
Yes, you
crazy,
do.
and 40
He
years.
still gets to do all his crazy things. I just
40
make sure I
years.
take care of him. in the
Yeah.
process.
Oh,
Good
that's,
job,
that's
Deb.
true love, and I really appreciate. We all appreciate you coming out. We've talked for
No
almost
kidding.
2 hours.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been
I love
amazing
it.
to hear your
It's
guys'
fantastic.
story,
The
and
story is
thank you so
amazing.
I
much.
didn't think we had much to talk about.
It's an honor.
Wind up the Karl doll.
Yeah, you
It's
guys
just
have
an
lived-
honor to sit here with you guys.
is.
I
You
mean,
guys
it
are
just,
awesome.
I think what you're
Thank
doing is
you.
awesome, and it lets everybody
It's
kind
been
of get
very
a feel.
fun.
You never asked me what I love about Chelan,
Yeah.
but I'll answer it.
All right.
Okay.
I love the giving and the caring in the community. During the fires, even up north when Omak caught on fire a couple of years ago, again, we shut shop down. And I'd get on the radio, and people here in town would come to the shop and load my truck, my trailer, day after day after day. And it's just,
It's true.
it's unbelievable.
It's
And
true.
Chelan is just so big-hearted that way. Anytime anybody needs anything,
We all pull together.
I was
Yep.
helping a single
Agreed.
mom at 2 out, and she didn't have firewood.
Yeah.
I called Doug Morgan, and boom, I'm up at Doug's
Yeah.
getting firewood. And
It's
it's just,
true.
it's
It's a
amazing.
beautiful thing.
Well, we're all grateful for each other, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what this podcast is about.
Yep.
So thank you for coming.
Yeah,
Thank you guys.
so much.
Have
So
a great
much.
Have a great night. Awesome.